After the World Tour Finals, Zamasu is one of the characters who received a 25% meter gain penalty across his entire kit. Now, he builds more meter than he did before, and to me, it seems like it's a complete reversion of the meter penalty that he received. Zamasu greatly appreciates this. Out of all the characters that received this nerf, he was definitely the one that stood out the most, as Zayn was the only one at a high level really executing anything with the character in that particular World Tour, especially at the group and final stages of the tournament. Now, Zamasu is going to be able to be building himself a little bit more meter and not going to be cashing out on his EX moves at a bar deficit. Instead, he'll be able to not only make up the amount of meter that he had to spend on adding in his EX moves, but also be able to build more bar on top of that. It's a change that he greatly appreciates from a nerf that arguably never should have happened to the character in the first place. Like how we observed with Android 16 earlier, you can now hold forward during the third hit of Zamasu's light auto combo, which is a throw, to change the behavior. Normally, this throw is too quick to hit on block. However, you can now go for a 29 frame command throw on this option instead. It does add a little bit to Zamasu's mental stack, and we'll see how effective it is once players get used to this. Zamasu can now Gatling from his JS to his jump heavy. He could already Gatling to his jump down heavy before. In mid-screen, you can see that there's really not much utility. In the corner, however, there could be some potentials here for Zamasu to add a few key blasts, then knock the opponent down towards an assist for a relaunch. Actually, I do have to redact my earlier statement about there potentially not being much mid-screen potential for Zamasu with the new JH cancel that you can do from JS. This is Yukai demonstrating the possibilities for a rejump in mid-screen with the character that definitely didn't exist before. It's actually kind of cool looking. One important note is that you can't do this new Gatling while Zamasu is in his Magneto flying state, or Heaven's Flash as it's properly called, as it's coded to give you that follow-up at all times. Eternal Justice has some functionality changes to accommodate the new sparking cancels that you can do with this move. In order to allow you to do some particular special cancels, you can now no longer perform any of the follow-up flight moves from Eternal Justice if you're holding back, down, or forwards. Holding upward still works. But as the back, forward, and down inputs will coincide with some other quarter circle specials that you can do with Zamasu, Bandai made it so that you're not going to get these follow-ups anymore. You can still go into flight as I've demonstrated, you just need to change your muscle memory in case you were using other inputs before. This also applies for when he's flying around in Heaven's Flash, but this one means that you can't. There's also some changes for when you're flying around in Heaven's Flash and you use Eternal Justice. However, the inputs that will deny you from going for the follow-ups are slightly different. They're up and down when you're flying around. Before, you could teleport with an up S. Now you have to do forward or back S instead. Again, this is to make it sure that you're going to be able to do some special cancels when you're in sparking with the character and preventing these options from coming out. A similar thing is happening with Divine Order during Heaven's Flash. If you hold up or down during it, you don't get the teleport follow-ups anymore. You have to have a forward or a back input. Some people, including Zayn himself, were reporting issues with getting their teleport follow-ups while using the Super Dash macro and holding forward there. But as you can see, it does work fine here. There might be just some couple of inputs that you have to clean up because of these new functionalities of these moves that are trying to enable you to get sparking cancels when you have that factor active. In previous versions, both orbs of Wall of Light across all versions of the move would pretty much strike the opponent at the same time. After detonating, as you can see, you had 65 frames of advantage, with a lot of that being the opponent taking out of the hit in the first place. Now, across all versions of Wall of Light, the second orb hits slightly later. As you can see, this gives us a little more hit stun to work with for Zamasu, but as you can imagine, when it comes to a technical character like Zamasu, a change like this basically destroys a various bunches of old setups and combo routes that he had, but it does give him new ones to play with potentially as well. Let's go ahead and head to Twitter now. Courtesy of Penguyan here, you can see that it's possible to loop his auto combo now. Whether or not this is going to be part of his optimal routes, I think, is going to require a lot more testing. As you can imagine, with the changes to hit stun, routes have to be adjusted. I think that for a time period, the Muto links that Zamasu players would use were thought to be gone, but turns out you just have to adjust your routes. Another side effect of this change is that on block, it dramatically gives Zamasu a lot more plus frames to work with. Before, he could count on about maybe 16 plus frames. This is what the current version looks like. 29 now. So Zamasu is going to be able to go for some potential other setups or mix-ups here and be able to actually create other advantages that weren't possible before. That's pretty much most of the relevant clips I can currently find at the moment on Twitter, as I imagine that most Zamasu mains are heavily in the lab trying to figure out what's actually the new optimal routing for the character, as many of their old routes seem to just no longer work due to the new functions of Wall of Light, but they're trying to discover what else is possible. And I imagine that after everything is said and done, we're going to find a new, stronger optimals for the character overall. Overall, I think it's a nice patch for Zamasu. He has his old meter build back, and again, he was one of the characters where it was certainly and completely unjustified for him to have had that nerf on him in the first place. So his utility as well as self-sufficiency has now been increased across the board overall. Many of the changes for him in this patch are very much focused around just making sure he plays well with the new sparking cancels that he can do with his special moves, but we're going to have to give the player base some time to really dive deep into the character and find out what's new and good with the Wall of Light changes for him overall. So it's a very small little patch for him overall, but I think that we might see a few players do even better with him than before. Still, he's a very technical character, so I don't imagine that many new players are picking him up.